Morning. I think we have a couple of people that have just joined us. Thanks for logging on, and we're just waiting for a few others to join in. Hope you've got a cup of tea ready to sit in and listen to this discussion, and hopefully you can participate a bit as well. While you're waiting, you might want to have a look on the SNAICC website. There's lots of resources on there. So it's SNAICC. And Adele will be talking to us from SNAICC. They've got lots of resources, information, and events and things that are put on that website. So it's well worth having a look at and monitoring regularly. Okay. Now become an air hostess. The website was SNAICC, SNAICC.
Ali, I would have said a pilot rather than an air hostess.
Oh, yes, yes. You're right, it is a pilot. All right, we might get started. This is being recorded so people can look at it, listen to it and look at it at a later date. So please let other people that work in your area, friends, family who might be interested in this, to please have a look at a later date. So just to clarify, if you go down the bottom of the screen and open up the chat box, that will be your opportunity to send messages to me or to Jenny or Melvin. Jenny will be monitoring the chat box and sending me messages through there. So she will be doing that while I'm focusing on the discussion. And Melvin is doing all the IT. So anything that needs to, if you're having any issues, please let us know through there as well. And we'll be able to help you with that. I'm hoping that everyone can see that chat box in the toolbar. So this session, we're going to be doing something a little bit different, and we're going to do some polling questions throughout to get some feedback from people that are listening to see what their thoughts are and make it a bit more personalised, the session. So that session, that polling will be private. We will not know who said what. So please feel free to be honest and open and share your thoughts with us. You will also have an opportunity to discuss that with us if you choose. So if you want to speak a bit more about that, please let us know and we can do that as well. So good morning and welcome to this morning's webinar, Keys to Successful Partnerships. This webinar is a part of the activities to help East Kimberley Aboriginal community controlled organisations to develop strong and productive relationships with government and non-government programs and to take leadership in providing services across the East Kimberley. Today we're talking to Adele Cox in the peak Indigenous organisation SNAICC Voice for Our Children, about how to create partnerships that empower our communities and organisations and achieve great results for our people. I am Alison Gibson. I'm a proud Noongar woman that was raised in Perth, Whadjuk country, and now living in the Kimberley in Kununurra with my family and working for Binari Binya Yarrawoo. So enjoying the heat at the moment, might not be saying that in a few months, but loving it up here in the Kimberleys. It's truly beautiful country. I want to acknowledge and pay my respects to all the traditional owners and custodians across the Kimberleys and acknowledge all the efforts that people have put into maintaining this beautiful country, looking after our people and our culture as well. It is lovely to be part of this community and to share in building strong communities up here right across the East Kimberley, and looking forward to that work as I continue on and sharing those the culture and the lessons and information with all those that I cross. Just so you know that your microphones are all turned off at the moment. If you raise your hand again, we can turn those microphones on during the session, but just so that we have some clear connection and no interference, we have turned off the microphones. So we have one main speaker today, Adele Cox, who I mentioned before. Many of you, I'm sure, know Adele. She is a proud Aboriginal woman as well. Adele is from the Kimberley. She is a local. She's a Bunaba Gidja woman, and after starting work as a broadcaster journalist in Broome, Adele expanded into research, policy and advocacy work. She has been an advocate for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health, and for many years led Thrilly's mental health and suicide prevention work. Currently, Adele is the Sector Development Manager with SNAICC, the Voice for Our Children. Hi Adele, how are you going today?
Hey Ali, I'm good, and thank you guys for inviting me.
No, it's lovely to have you. You're a wealth of knowledge and you've had lots of experience, so this session is definitely going to be one that you can share lots with us and help us in this area of strengthening and building partnerships and sustaining them. You started work with SNAICC in Melbourne a few months ago. Can you tell us a little bit about SNAICC and the work that it does for our children?
Sure. Before I do that, I might actually just do my acknowledgement to country.
Absolutely.
And I would like to acknowledge that I am actually coming to you today from Wurundjeri lands or Wurundjeri lands as part of the Kulin Nation here in Melbourne. Yes, we are in lockdown, and as I said to Ali before, for those who know me, yes, my colour is fading because we've been inside for too long. I would also like to just acknowledge and pay my respects to Mirarong Gadjarong people on the lands in which your office is located, and would like to also acknowledge the lands of those many others who have joined and are participating in this webinar as well. So, SNAICC. Yes, SNAICC is the national peak body for the voices of Aboriginal children. So 40 years old now, the organisation is, and this year was a fairly, fairly big milestone for us, and our celebrations haven't kicked off yet. So we're hoping that there might be something tied to our conference at the end of this year. But SNAICC, as the peak body for the voices of young people, is a member-based organisation that's there primarily to provide advice, support, advocacy on behalf of the many Aboriginal community-controlled childcare, early learning centres and community and family centres across the country. Unlike the Aboriginal medical services, there's not as many of us that are around, but we know that in terms of the work that SNAICC's been doing on behalf of its members has been critical in terms of providing advice to governments in terms of what needs to happen around policy, program development, but also funding. Catherine Little, our CEO, she's an Arana woman from the Central Australian region and Alice Springs. Catherine is a member of the National Coalition of Peaks, so that's a national organisation that has organisations like NACCHO, the Healing Foundation, and other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peak organisations who are participants in that. And they're very much leading the work with the federal government around Close the Gap and the new Closing the Gap national agreement. A lot of our work, though, crosses over in terms of the work that we do and our liaison and engagement with states and territory governments, as well as conversations and ongoing work that we do with many non-Aboriginal, non-government organisations as well. So we have, policy advice is one of our key focuses and responsibilities. supporting our members. Sector development and training comes into that in terms of making sure that we're forever, looking for opportunities for our members, both in terms of professional development and the like. Are just there to make sure that the voices of our services on the ground, who are the ones supporting families, children and young people, are at the fore of any conversation that happens in this space.
Excellent. Yeah, it has been a very powerful organisation for many years now, and I've had the privilege of going to a number of the conferences that are held, and they are held in very high regard and well worth going to, and learnt a lot in those spaces. They're massive, to be honest. The amount of topics they cover and the amount of people that go to them is amazing, and that ongoing work that SNAICC does, particularly in that policy space, and having that direct line to government to make sure that the correct information is getting there, and that we have that collective voice and that collaborative work on an ongoing basis is essential to making sure we do this right across the country. So it's a wonderful organisation that is doing amazing things and has been for 14 years. So yeah, amazing.
40.
40. I thought it was 40 because I thought I've known for it as long as I've worked in this sector. So thank you for clarifying that. Was there anything else that you wanted to share with us about yourself before we kicked off into the next part about partnerships?
Yeah, look, I just wanted to, as I reflected with you guys earlier before people joined on, I just wanted to, acknowledge and pay my respects to some of my family, actually, because there's sorry business happening in Kununurra today. And so there's one of my aunties is being laid to rest. So I just wanted to, acknowledge and pay respects, particularly to my cousin brother Stuart, whose mum sadly passed away. And wanted to also just, highlight the fact that, yes, I'm so far away from home geographically, but it is nice to, feel a bit closer today, even if it's just through this online forum. And not planned, but I'm going to, put a little sorry story out there. I had to defrost some frozen barramundi that I had to buy from Woolworths. So for those of you who have the luxury of going out and catching your own fresh fish, yeah, I'm very envious. I think that was it for me, Ali, and I reckon probably good spot to go into that first poll question, hey, Melvin?
Yes. So we'll bring up the first poll question now, and if those of you online could participate, that would be fantastic. So the first poll is your organisation currently engaged in a partnership? We'll just give a few moments to for people to answer that. And while we are waiting, I also did want to pay my respects to the family who are at the funeral today, and to send our love and strength to everyone during these difficult times. So if you are having any problems with participating in the poll, please put it on the chat, and we will look into how to fix that up. Okay. Yeah. So it's great to see that 75% of people have been involved in formal partnerships. Also 25% in informal partnerships, and I think that happens a lot, especially in regional areas, people working together and across sectors. And also the no partnerships as such, but we collaborate with others. So I think this session will hopefully be helpful in getting to look at how to maybe formalise those partnerships and build on them and get more out of them in the future. So thanks to those people who participated in that poll, it's really helpful. So what caught our attention at SNAICC has been the research into the partnerships between Indigenous organisations at community level and non-Indigenous organisations working in the early years space. Can you tell us a little bit about this research and what SNAICC is learning?
Oh, trying to navigate between screens now. All right. Yeah, thanks for that, Ali, and nice to see those responses there. I think they, kind of summarize what we assumed people would kind of respond to as well. So what I'm going to do is I've actually just got speaking notes where the fact that most of us have had to transfer and migrate onto online forums to speak to each other, to meet with each other now, and to have that interaction has made it difficult. But one of the things that I've quite liked is our not that it's a mandated thing in our organization, but one of the things that I find is a bit distracting is having slides and my the loss of that ability for me to see people, even if it is just through screens, and or for you to see me. So I'm going to go straight into some speaking notes and kind of a summary that we've put together in terms of the work that SNAICC's been doing around this particular issue around partnerships and successful partnerships. So the majority of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families and our families we know are strong, resilient, nurturing, and they're the ones that provide the supportive, loving and positive environments to raise our kids. However, some of our mob continue to face quite significant challenges in overcoming the impacts of colonisation, including historic and ongoing discrimination and exclusion, systemic child removal, intergenerational trauma and the impact that has, not only on the decades past, but that we're certainly still seeing the impacts of that now in 2021, dislocation from land and culture, community disempowerment and poverty. Engagement with child and family support services is absolutely critical to strengthening Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families and improving life outcomes for those vulnerable children. However, a lot of our data is showing there's low national level of access to support services by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families, and support services regularly identified that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families had, stated to them that they're hard to reach. And this was something that was picked up in one of our Family Matters reports a few years ago. Yet this is more properly characterised as a service system that presents significant barriers to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander engagement, barriers that can be overcome by working within a cultural competence framework, and for the purposes of this discussion today, engaging in effective partnerships with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities and organisations. Based on all the available evidence, we know that genuine and respectful partnerships between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community-controlled organisations and non-Indigenous service providers have multiple benefits. And these include ongoing cultural competence and safety capability development for non-Indigenous service providers, governance and service capacity development for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander organisations, development of shared capacity in response to community needs, and development of individual and communities' capacity for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in areas including workforce and community leadership. Despite partnerships being so crucial, though, many of our mob have certainly shared and have had negative experiences of tokenistic relationships that were labelled as partnerships, which has led to a level of mistrust and non-Indigenous services believing that they may use partnerships as a tick box activity for cultural competence training, or as part of their response to them having engaged with community without a real kind of deeper commitment to sustainable relationships or local community empowerment. And I think part of the core of what this session today is about is actually exploring and navigating, well, how do we create conversations, but how do we also create opportunities where genuine partnerships can be established and maintained. So what does it mean to engage in genuine partnerships with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander organisations? What do these look like? And how can you do it? SNAICC has recognised 8 core principles that underpin genuine and successful partnerships between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander and non-indigenous service providers. These principles are detailed in SNAICC's resource, Creating Change Through Partnerships, and Ali gave the SNAICC website address and kind of prompted you to have a look at, at your own leisure. But there are some really great resources that are available online that you can have a look at in terms of helping to guide it, and most of which I've actually summarised in the presentation today. So in summary, the core principles are as follows, remembering that there are 8 of them. First one is a commitment to long-term sustainable relationships of trust. This requires significant time spent on relationship building between staff, organisations and the community. Partners must commit to an ongoing relationship, not only for a specific activity or project. And that's some of the other things that we hear often as well is, they might only look for us when they need something, or when there's, a funding submission that wants to, that's due. And sometimes NGOs kind of will engage with an Aboriginal community organisation to bolster and support, an application or a tender. And those are some of the hard realities, unfortunately, in terms of why there is that level of mistrust. The second principle is around the fact that non-indigenous organisations must respect Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and history. And that requires a commitment to build cultural understanding, to consult and listen to the local community, and to value Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander knowledge and input. Number 3, organisations must commit to self-determination for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. This requires empowering Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities to lead the response to child and family needs. And we've seen many conversations, and there has been a nice shift actually in the way that governments now engage with local community, where they are acknowledging that, that word co-design, that seems to be coming through more and more as a strength, but also a genuine acknowledgement that local Aboriginal people and organisations must lead these conversations. Number 4, organisations must be dedicated to improving the long-term well-being for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children, families and our communities, which requires identifying and sharing respective strengths in supporting children and families. Number 5, organisations must commit to sharing the responsibility for partnership objectives and activities, which requires partners to work together to develop indicators of success and to monitor and evaluate progress. Number 6, process elements must be valued as integral to support the partnership, which requires agreements, clarifying commitments, roles, and accountability. Number 7, partners must redress unequal or discriminatory relationships, structures, and outcomes by correcting power and resource imbalances. And finally, non-indigenous organisations must commit to working differently with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children and families, which requires the development of cultural safety and service delivery, and a recognition of the fact that non-indigenous approaches are often not the best way to engage and support with our families. And I think acknowledging, as I said, the fact that there's a breadth and a wealth of knowledge and experience from local organisations and individuals who've been working in the space and the sector for a long time that should be utilised more. So these principles are absolutely fundamental to the creation and maintenance of genuine and successful partnerships. Now, in speaking to Ali prior to the session, we said that was, I'm going to pause for a minute so that Melvin can put up the second poll question, because it ties in quite nicely in terms of what we're keen to see people's responses to. So I'll have a bit of a break now, and Melvin can put that second poll question up.
We are having some little issues, but we are ready to go now. How have partnerships helped your organisation? There's a number of responses you can choose from there. So we'll give you a moment to choose one of those. So if you are on the line, if you could join in the poll, that would be fabulous. Oh, we have got a few responses there. We'll share those responses with you. Can you share it? So sharing of strengths and resources to cover delivery gaps came out as the strongest, which is fantastic. We then had a few with 50%, so better results of our communities and families. They made our organisations stronger, helped non-indigenous organisations to better understand and respond to local needs and priorities. And we've also had the chance to learn from other organisations.
Excellent. Some good responses there. And well done to yourself, Ali and Jenny, for creating those questions. I think they're really nice. Well, they're brilliant in terms of at least giving us a gauge and insights into people's understandings, but also I think the practicalities of what organisations are doing around partnerships. So I'll continue. So I've just covered off on those 8 principles, and as I said, that information is available on our website and through the resources that we've got, which are downloadable as PDFs, I believe. So it'll be great for you guys to kind of have a look at that at your own leisure after this actual webinar. So SNAICC's Creating Change Through Partnerships resource further breaks down the creation and maintenance of genuine partnerships into 4 key strategies. Strategy 1 is about building the cultural competence of the non-indigenous organisation. In genuine partnerships, non-indigenous organisations have a responsibility to develop culturally competent and safe professional practice. Cultural competence forms the basis of an organisation's readiness to engage respectfully with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and organisations. Delivering cultural safety service requires ongoing learning and commitment, particularly for non-indigenous organisations. In a partnership, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander organisations and people can often take roles in sharing and teaching about their cultures and supporting others to develop their knowledge and understanding. But these roles need to be valued and resourced within a partnership. Remembering what I said earlier, it has to be sustained and ongoing, rather than just one-off kind of activities where, you're able to tick the box, under a reconciliation action plan, or, if your organisation actually has, put in policies or put in kind of priorities around increasing participation and or employment rates as other examples. Strategy 2 is spending time building respectful relationships of trust with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and communities and their organisations. A significant commitment to and investment in developing relationships of trust is necessary to enable genuine and respectful partnerships. This is especially important for non-indigenous service providers that need to re-establish trust that has been damaged by a history of mistreatment of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, or whether they're, through previous leadership, there may have been, significant issues that have impacted on ongoing relationships that organisations may have had with each other. So it's important to take stock and kind of, review and assess that. This can be done, of course, through connecting, listening, and importantly, sticking around. Strategy 3 is to listen and learn from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to determine how you can support capacity for community-led responses. Non-indigenous organisations need to listen to the needs and aspirations of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities to determine if, when, where, and how they can use their resources, knowledge, and skills to support the priorities of communities. Adopting a genuine partnership approach requires not duplicating or competing with existing community-controlled family and child support services. And there's been a massive shift as well in terms of how governments now, run their procurement process and when they put out tenders and the like, if there is a priority around Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families and communities, or Aboriginal families and children rather, often that procurement process will have, say, a criteria that says, an organisation, if they're an non-indigenous NGO, have to prove that they have existing and or can build, positive, genuine partnerships and relationships with other key stakeholders and Aboriginal community-controlled organisations. There is a commitment in the new Closing the Gap agreement to build the role of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community-controlled organisations to deliver services in their own communities, so that partnership organisations need to think about what role they can play in helping build the capacity of local organisations to do this. The final strategy is to establish the processes, governance structures, and accountability required for effective and sustainable partnerships. A strong and enduring partnership requires the development of a clear and effective governance structure for the partnership and the establishment of processes that support and sustain the ongoing development. Particular attention needs to be paid to how the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community is represented in partnership governance. This will differ depending on the context of your community and partnership. Sometimes it will be appropriate for the community to be represented through the relevant community-controlled organisations, and sometimes it'll be important for other community leaders and elders to be included, particularly if there's a project or program that might be technical or specific to a certain topic or area. Often organisations, and we do this regularly, is kind of identifying individuals who come in as topic experts. And so again, you're going to have to kind of consider how and what might be the best fit for you going forward. Further information about these strategies and any of the previous principles that I outlined, as I said, and the practical tips on how you can apply them in your organisation are available in the resources that SNAICC has. And one of the things that I actually like about the resources, and I made this comment to Catherine and the team when I joined the organisation, was that what's in there as a process, but also in terms of some of the key elements that were identified in the resources that SNAICC had, whilst they were primarily developed for our sector, the applicability and transfer of that as a process and as information and as knowledge to any other sector, whether it's education, whether it's justice, whether it's employment, it's designed and it's written in a way that it's flexible, that you can make it suit to any area that you're working in. So keep that in mind as well, that even though from SNAICC's perspective, those resources were developed with through and with the lens of Aboriginal families and children in mind, its use and applicability can span far greater than within our sector. Last year, SNAICC launched an online partnership self-audit reporting tool and invited organisations who are involved in partnerships between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander and non-indigenous organisations to support children and families to actually complete a voluntary audit of their partnerships. The results of the audit showed that despite the high enthusiasm and strong initial commitment to establishment of partnerships at the beginning between the two services, as the partnerships progress, the level of commitment to those partnerships from the organisations drops off a bit. And various complexities and challenges result in a loss of momentum and decreased output. This aligns with some of the negative experiences that many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have had of that tokenistic relationships, that are labelled as partnerships. And so I think it's, I can't stress enough, and I know that Ali and Jenny and the team there at BBY will do the same, that it's, partnerships have to be sustained and ongoing. It can't be sporadic and kind of, just appear on a needs basis. So it's certainly our hope that the tools and resources that we've developed at SNAICC will help to assist organizations to work together in genuine partnerships so that we can achieve the outcomes that we need for our model. We've certainly had the privilege of working with a variety of partnerships across Australia to help strengthen the relationships and the work that we're doing. And as I said on the outset, acknowledging that we respond to as SNAICC's role as a peak organisation, we're forever having conversations with non-indigenous NGOs as well, because we know a lot of our families and a lot of our children are engaged within as service users within those organisations and settings. We are certainly particularly grateful to the Australian Institute of Family Studies, who have been partners with us for a number of years now, and have assisted us to identify a few communities across Australia where we've been doing quite detailed on-the-ground work with and working closely with them to provide training and ongoing support as part of our Genuine Partnerships program. I had flagged with Jenny as well and said, in terms of how we might be engaged as SNAICC with your organisation going forward, there is an openness and that flexibility that, we can certainly have ongoing conversations with a few of you who are participating today about how, if interested, SNAICC might be able to be engaged to look at setting up some training over there in the East Kimberley. And that'll selfishly give me a reason to come back home too.
Win-win, Adele.
Win-win, exactly. And look, we know that partnerships work and they can work and where, and they can only work though where there is absolute mutual understanding, agreement, and commitment to positive outcomes. And recently we actually, with Life Without Barriers, entered and signed off on a very significant partnership whereby we will work with Life Without Barriers to transfer its out-of-home care services for all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community-controlled organisations and services within the next 10 years. And that's been quite significant. Hats off to Life Without Barriers and
sorry, you've just cut out.
In terms of showing that commitment and again, aligned to a lot of the discussions that people and organisations have around Close the Gap. We know that, we've got more than 20,000 of our babies who are in out-of-home care. And there are significant steps that are required to reaching the Closing the Gap target of reducing the overrepresentation of our children in out-of-home care by 45% by the year 2031. That's only 10 years away. And currently, this target is not on track. And unless we change the way that we do business, unfortunately, that target's not going to be met either. So by supporting our children to be strong in culture, SNAICC and Life Without Barriers believes that this new partnership that's been signed and delivered hasn't been delivered yet, but we've signed it, that this initiative will also serve to support the sector on a much wider scale. And who knows, this might be the catalyst that we needed to start this ripple effect where we see the transfer of the funding and kind of focus from a lot of the other non-indigenous NGOs transfer directly to Aboriginal community control. So Ali, that's me in terms of what I'd formally put together.
Excellent. There's lots there. I was jotting down some notes as you were talking. I think one of the first things is that having those long-term plans where we can work towards leveraging off of the skills and the knowledge of other agencies and transferring that across to Aboriginal agencies is essential if we're going to be able to take over that work and increase our capacity, because it is a lot of work to be done there, and we have lots of small organisations, but to be able to take on the bigger chunk of the work, then we're going to need to grow and be able to take on those different roles that maybe we haven't before, or maybe that we haven't needed to be as skilled in before, and working with other organisations to learn from them is essential in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things and rather than seeing this as competition, if you like, or, the us and them, which absolutely has to be eliminated, we know that there's power in the fact that if you set up a service or a program and you do it the right way and it responds absolutely to the needs of local Aboriginal community, it's much easier to transfer and apply that then to, another migrant community group. And in fact, transfer and apply that to non-Aboriginal families who are struggling, and at the lower end of the kind of socioeconomic status.
Absolutely.
So we know there's great benefit in, doing things properly for our mob, because it's much easier then to translate that into use and practical uptake for other population groups.
Yeah, I honestly believe if you get it right for us, you get it right for everyone. Lots of the services that I think you and I have seen and been involved in, that it hasn't just been our mob that's wanted to be able to participate in those programs, but other groups, whether they're, different minority groups from different backgrounds or disabilities or sexualities, that we really do have a way of working with people that does work with everyone. And that's something that non-Indigenous organisations can really learn from and grow from us. It's not just that one-way street of them giving us knowledge, but we have so much to share with them as well. That was something that I particularly liked with the core objectives, and starting from the cultural competence, and of acknowledging that the non-Indigenous organisations really need to take that on board and have that as their core work, not just something that gets done nicely on the side or ticks a box or does that part for the funding, the grant application or whatever it is, but that this is work that needs to go on for a very long time, where cultural competence is something that continues and grows, and we're all on that journey. So putting that at the centre, I think, has a great role in changing that power imbalance that I think is often there in different relationships, and particularly when there's very large NGOs and very small ACOs working together. Having that there as something to come back to, a document that says this is what we need to prioritise and work on, is incredibly helpful. Now, while we've talking about some of the challenges, we might go to the next poll. So what do you think is the major challenge in forming partnerships? If everyone could share their thoughts on that. There is an other box there as well, so we do recognise that there are lots of different reasons, but we have narrowed it down to a few that are quite common. And as Adele mentioned earlier, forming the partnerships is often the exciting stage where everyone wants to be involved, and it's got that momentum and passion. So sometimes that can be the easier part of the work, but do recognise that there are still challenges within that. Later on, we will ask a poll about the major challenges in sustaining partnerships, where things do become a little bit more difficult, that the challenges are, I guess, a bit more obvious and have been around for a bit longer. But first of all, the major challenges in forming partnerships. So the results for that poll are just coming up now. There's a few there on 50%. So we've got mistrust of organisations' motives, distance and ability to access remote locations, a huge issue up in the Kimberley. Yeah, I think living here has really given me a much better understanding of that challenge. And lack of understanding and appreciation of Aboriginal ways of working. And that's something that we were just talking about just now, about making sure that people appreciate that Aboriginal people have lots of information to share and knowledge, that it isn't just a one-way street, and that we need to change in the ways we do business in order for things to work well. A comment from Melanie. One of the challenges to partnerships that I've experienced is partners working on different timeframes. Absolutely, I did jot down that as one of my speaking points as well. So thank you for that. I think that the time that things take is really something that is not considered well at the start and throughout the relationship with organisations. Adele, what do you think about that?
Yeah, look, it's always a tricky one, but I think, you know, from the outset, clear communication and, you know, setting out kind of agreement on particular things is important, and some of that is, you know, that issue as Melanie's raised around timeframes. The other thing that, you know, and with timeframes, it's kind of tied into funding requirements in terms of reporting obligations and that kind of stuff. I mean, how many of you, you know, have programs that are funded by, you know, 10 different agencies? So therefore, that means 10 different kind of timeframes in terms of milestone reporting and or when, you know, projects or programs need to be completed. And so I think making sure that, you know, everything's upfront on the table is absolutely critical. And making sure that as part of a partnership, you're actually agreeing to terms that are set out. You know, whether it's timeframes, whether it's on KPIs or the deliverables, you know, budget allocations, that kind of stuff. And, you know, that way there's no confusion. And you know, I said the term mutual agreement and understanding, and that's absolutely critical because, you know, you can't have one party that's sort of calling the shots, you know, the other then expected to toe the line, so to speak. So making sure that, you know, genuine partnerships means that there are genuine, you know, communications and engagement from the very beginning.
Absolutely. I think around that time as well, often the time spent with people is underestimated, whether it's with community organisations or the elders or family groups. A Western way of working is often booking in those time slots, and that's not as effective for us or for anyone, to be honest. I think it's one of those things that doesn't really work for anyone, but allowing enough time to build relationships so that they can sustain. Otherwise, it does become a bit tokenistic and yeah.
Like it's a bit like, you know, research. So when you're going out and you know, consulting and doing one-on-one kind of interviews with participants, and often, you know, you'll be asked as part of your methodology, you know, to outline and kind of detail, you know, how much time is each questionnaire, you know, or survey going to take for completion. And I remember having many conversations with, you know, Fiona Stanley when I worked at the Institute many years ago, and actually, you know, making the point to people like Steve Zubrick and Sven Silburn, you know, who were lead researchers there at the Institute, saying, hey, you know, what we might put on paper and say, you know, this is going to take 45 minutes to complete. I was like, you know, if you're expecting me to go and sit down with the nans over there and ask them these questions, I said, no, you know, that's gonna require at least twice or three times that amount of time, because you got to go there, you got to check in, have that yarn, how's family doing? You know, I said, you've got to establish and create those conversations first before actually, you know, getting down to the business side of things. And, you know, time to make a cup of tea, and you know, don't you dare rock up empty-handed either. Make sure you got, you know, cake or biscuit.
Yes, absolutely. It really does help. And I think recognising that not only is this a cultural way that we do business and we work as families and community, but also a mistrust from things that have gone on before when they've engaged with different services. So making sure that we are there with good intentions, and whenever we go there, when we're partnering with other agencies, that we are vouching for them as well. So we need to make sure that our reputation is looked after in that process as well.
Yeah.
We might move on to the next question for the poll. What do you think is the major challenge in sustaining partnerships? And as you said from that audit tool, this is where things got a bit more difficult and things kind of went downhill. So it'll be good to get some feedback from the group on this. We're just bringing up the poll now. If anyone does have anything they'd like to share with us on the chat, then please do. If you would like to speak directly to Adele, then you're more than welcome to as well. So one of the things that I can see from the poll is that has come up as misplaced priorities. And I think that comes back to your point that you have made before, Adele, about making sure that everyone is very clear about what this relationship and this partnership is going to, what the objectives are, what the intended outcomes are going to be, and who is going to do what, be responsible for what, and how, I think, for sustaining relationships, how you're going to have those difficult conversations. Navigating those conversations, as you said earlier, can be tricky, especially when you're talking about doing business in ways they aren't familiar with or comfortable with. And another one that is coming up on there is a lack of staff resources, and that is incredibly relevant to the East Kimberley. There is a lot of work to be done and very limited resources. I think everyone is vying for staff as well, and we're trying to get people from a very small pool. If you are on Facebook and you aren't able to see the polls, and we are happy to send them through. So if you do want to know what the polls were, please send a message to us and we will send them through to you as well. So we've got those results up. And the misplaced priorities and the staff, the lack of staff resources came through as the strongest ones there. Was there any questions from participants? We just wanted to see if there was anything that the session has brought up for you, or maybe that you are still wondering about that you'd like to take this opportunity to ask Adele while we do have her on the line. If you could either put your hand up or put something in the chat box, and we'll know that you are wanting to speak up. Nothing has come through at the moment. I did want to speak a little bit about your audit tool as well. I did have a look at that leading up to this work, and I think that's fantastic. And I love the way that it gets the voices from all the different parties to speak about their own experiences, and then coming together and speaking about those experiences as well. Sorry about that. I think that's really useful. And again, I think it's one of those tools that you mentioned that would be useful for all different sectors, that if you're in partnerships, that those questions are really applicable and helpful for sustaining, developing, growing those partnerships, and having those opportunities to have difficult conversations, but they're going to be where you can get some of that stuff aired out and try to resolve in a helpful way.
Yeah, it was one of the things that I did find interesting, and when you read through kind of the, when you read through that report, we highlight the fact that even though, 3/4 of those who responded to that audit tool were from non-indigenous NGOs, I like the fact that they were absolutely brutal and honest in terms of responding to, things where, it's just not working, or where they've had challenges and struggles and the like. So that was a really great way for us to kind of gauge and see, one, that, I think that speaks to the commitment and the goodwill that's there from a lot of non-indigenous NGOs. But also, just love the fact that they were absolutely honest in their responses to some of those questions.
I think it's very true. From the difficult conversations, that's where you grow. That's where the changes start to happen. It's that's where the magic happens, I think, when you can have those brutally honest conversations and go, this is not working, and work on steps to improve that in the future. So it's good to see that intention is there from the non-Indigenous organisations, and they are doing that self-reflection, because it's vital to progressing the work.
Ali, I'm going to ask a question, because I'm a bit of a nosy body, but this, I think, comes back to my earlier formal training as a journalist.
Yes, and a researcher.
And a researcher, which is how you and I know each other. Yeah. Participants who are on the line, I mean, one of the things that, Jenny's kind of flagged with me and we've had conversations now almost immediately after I started at SNAICC, actually. So we've been having these yarns and conversations. And of course, with border restrictions and COVID and the like, obviously, we can't physically get there to Kununurra or to the East Kimberley. But one of the things that I flagged, because we actually do have a couple of really great ongoing relationships and formal partnerships with local organisations in Kununurra and Halls Creek. So that requires us and me particularly to find time to travel over there when I'm allowed. But just wanted to gauge interest from some of the other participants in the room. If we looked at coming over and making the use of the time that it takes and the money that it costs to get over there to the East Kimberley, what's the level of interest like for us to perhaps, look at setting up a couple of training sessions under our Genuine Partnerships resource and training? And people can just
see any comments on the chat at the moment, but I can definitely add to that. I am involved in the early years working group, and that group is coming along leaps and bounds. I've just had a comment from Sana saying I would be 100% interested, and she is one of the people involved in our early years working group. So I think it's pretty confident to say that we'd be thrilled to have SNAICC come up and do some work with us. We are doing working on partnerships amongst the ACOs and the NGOs in the area. We recognise that there is not enough awareness and involvement and service delivery to our children up here, and for many different reasons. So trying to look at what those are so that we can do better in that space, but get everyone working together. So it's kind of perfect timing for the early years working group in particular. Thinking more broadly as well, like you said, it cuts across different areas. The employment working group as well, that's all about partnerships as well. In fact, all of BBY's work is about partnerships, so it fits with all of our ACOs. And I would suggest that there'd be a lot of interest in that. And I think from different levels within the organisation as well. I think that's become quite evident now. It's not just about the CEOs and the general managers, but the team leaders and the coordinators and the people on the floor working in the community, that we all need to be on board with how these relationships are happening and all going in the same direction. So that would be fantastic.
Sana, you'll be pleased to know, because one of our partners, one of the partnerships we have is actually with Wunan, and my auntie Liz Cox has already said to me, when I go to do the work with Auntie Vicky Butters and the mob in Halls Creek, she had kind of flagged and said, can I duplicate and make the most of my time being in the East to stay on in Kununurra to do some community training in Kununurra and Wyndham. So we'll keep having yarns.
Fantastic. It's perfect timing. It really is, coming with everything that we're doing in this space at the moment. I think there's such a want from all the different staff, no matter who I talk to, that they want to learn more in this area and grow those relationships and learn more about how to do things differently and yeah, where they can improve and build on and grow. So we are coming up to the close of the webinar. I would just like to take this opportunity to thank Adele. Thank you for sharing all your wonderful knowledge and the work that SNAICC is doing over the past 40 years, not 14. And there is a huge amount of resources on that website. Also, that partnership document that is on there does have some great links as well to go to. So I have been flicking through all those as I've been looking at the different resources and sites and thinking they're just ideal, and takes out all the navigating, the research that you have to do, and it's all there ready for you. So all in one place. So I really do recommend that everyone does take an opportunity to go and have a look at that website and to check it regularly, because there are great things that SNAICC does, and it does pump out a lot of stuff on a regular basis. So it's a key resource for the early years sector, absolutely. Also, just wanted to note that the early years priority area is for Halls Creek and Kununurra. So BBY is doing lots of work with those agencies in that area, but also Wyndham is very involved in that area as well. I'd just like to thank everyone for joining us today. If you did want to ask any more questions, please send them through and we will follow up as best we can. We will send out the SNAICC website in the follow-up email so that everyone does have that available to them. We will be loading up the session so that everyone can share this link with anyone that may be interested. And like we said, it cuts across all sectors. There is fabulous resources for anyone working in this space of Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal organisations working together, or just learning new tips on partnerships and many other topics. Also, Adele has very kindly offered to share her contact details with participants. So if you would like those, please contact us and we can forward that on to you. Thanks again from sunny Kununurra in our nice air conditioning at the moment, but beautiful 40 degrees outside. Thank you, Adele, and hope to see you up here on Mirrawong Gadgerong country with us very soon.
And catching my fresh barramundi.
Yes, that's right. A lot of it to take home. No more cold.
Thanks, Ali. Thanks, Jenny and Melvin.
Oh, also thank you to Jenny and Melvin as well. They've been fantastic behind the scenes. I completely forgot that. So please take away Jenny and Melvin. Excellent. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.